Let's talk about the 4 things that quietly control your life: your mouth, your mood, your money, and your mind. Most people live on autopilot, reacting instead of responding, spending without thinking, speaking without pausing, and letting their emotions lead. But real power, real freedom, comes when you take back the wheel. This isn't about perfection, it's about learning self-mastery one moment at a time. Today we're breaking it down, piece by piece, because when you learn to control these 4 areas, everything else in your life starts to fall into place. Let's get to it. Simple, honest, and practical. You ever say something and immediately wish you could grab the words midair and pull them back? Yeah, we've all been there. A quick reply, a sarcastic comment, a harsh tone, and just like that, the damage is done. One sentence, that's all it takes to shift the energy in a room, break trust, or even change the course of a relationship. And we like to tell ourselves, "I was just being honest," or "I didn't mean it like that." But the truth is, what comes out of your mouth is a direct reflection of what's going on inside you. You don't just say things, you release what's been building. The mouth is a dangerous thing when it's left untrained. It's not just about being polite, it's about being powerful in the right way. And here's the thing, real power isn't loud. It's not flashy, it's not being the one who always has something to say. Real power is restraint. It's discipline, it's knowing you could say something, but choosing not to, because you know your words are valuable. And valuable things aren't thrown around casually. We live in a world where everyone wants to talk. Comment sections are full. Arguments are louder than conversations. People are posting before they are thinking. But if you're someone who's serious about growth, serious about peace, serious about becoming better, then learning to control your mouth has to be a top priority. You ever notice how the wisest people in the room are usually the quietest? It's not because they don't have anything to say. It's because they understand that words carry weight. They don't spend their energy proving themselves, they protect their energy by choosing their words with care. And let's be honest, some of us are talking ourselves into stress, into debt, into broken relationships, into regret. Not because we're bad people, but because we've never been taught to slow down our mouth long enough for our brain and heart to catch up. So today, I want to challenge you not just to listen more and talk less, but to speak with intention. Ask yourself, is what I'm about to say helpful, necessary, kind, and if not, let it pass. Let silence speak for you. Silence is powerful. Not every opinion needs to be said. Not every insult needs a comeback. Not every situation requires your input. Sometimes the most mature thing you can do is stay quiet. Let people underestimate you. Let them assume you don't owe everyone an explanation, you owe yourself peace. And while we're here, let's talk about tone, because it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. You can speak truth and still be gentle. You can give correction and still be respectful. You can be direct without being destructive. The tone of your voice sets the temperature of the conversation. You can either warm the room with calm or burn it down with heat. When emotions are high, the mouth wants to move fast. That's when you say things you'll regret, and those words, you can't take them back. You can apologize, yes, but you can't unhear something. That's why discipline starts before the conversation. That's why self-awareness is key. You've got to know your triggers. You've got to know the environments that make you careless. You've got to practice calm before the storm hits, because when you've trained yourself to slow down, you're not just reacting, you're choosing. There's a simple habit I use, and it works. Pause, one breath, one count in your head before you speak. You'd be amazed what that little space will do. It gives your brain time to process. It gives your heart time to lead. It gives you a moment to ask, is this worth it? And most of the time, it's not. Now, this doesn't mean you become passive. This doesn't mean you let people walk over you or never stand up for yourself. Not at all. In fact, when you learn to control your mouth, you become even more powerful, because now, when you do speak, people listen. They know you're not just talking to talk, you're speaking because it matters. You're speaking with clarity, calm, and purpose. And that's the kind of voice that carries weight. That's the kind of voice that leads rooms, changes lives, and diffuses conflict. That's the kind of voice that people remember, not for how loud it was, but for how true it was. So if you've ever wondered why your words don't land, maybe it's time to say less but mean more. If you've ever felt misunderstood, maybe it's not the message, it's the delivery. And if you've ever burned bridges with your tone, your temper, or your timing, maybe it's time to rebuild by first getting quiet. Control over your mouth is not about silence for silence's sake. It's about building a life of peace, power, and purpose, one conversation at a time. Because if you can control your mouth, you can control your world. And that's where change begins. You ever wake up and just feel off? No real reason, nothing dramatic happened, but something inside is tense, uneasy. And from there, the rest of the day seems to spiral. You snap at someone who didn't deserve it. You zone out in a meeting. You suddenly don't feel like doing anything productive. That's not just a bad day, that's your mood taking the wheel. And when your mood drives, it rarely takes you anywhere good. We like to believe we're in control, but if you watch how we live, it becomes clear. Most people are being led by their emotions, not the other way around. 1 minute they're up, next minute they're down. One comment ruins the whole day, one delay wrecks the plan, one look from someone, and suddenly we're spiraling. That's not peace, that's emotional chaos, and it's exhausting. Let me say this clearly, your emotions are not bad. They're part of being human, they tell you something important, but they were never meant to run the show. Emotions are signals, not steering wheels, they're visitors, not permanent residents. You can feel something deeply and still choose not to act on it. You can feel frustrated and still respond with grace. You can feel angry and still remain in control. That's what emotional maturity looks like. See, we tend to think strength is being stone cold, unaffected, unbothered, but real strength isn't being numb, it's being fully present, fully aware of what you're feeling, and still choosing to act with wisdom. That takes work, that takes discipline, because moods are tricky. They sneak in through fatigue, disappointment, insecurity, and sometimes just plain stress. If you're not watching yourself, your mood will set the tone for how you treat people, and often, they'll end up paying for what they didn't even cause. So I want to challenge you today to stop treating your mood like it's untouchable. You are not powerless. You are not stuck in the way you feel. You may not be able to control what hits you, but you can control how long it stays. And that shift, that mindset, is everything, because once you start taking ownership of your emotional state, you stop being reactive and start becoming intentional. Let me give you something practical. Name what you're feeling, say it out loud or write it down. I'm irritated, and I'm anxious, and I feel overlooked. Call it out, because when you name it, you take its power. Most people don't even know what they're feeling, they just carry tension around all day and let it leak onto others. But clarity leads to calm when you can say, okay, I'm frustrated, but that doesn't mean I have to be rude, and now you're leading yourself. Another thing, watch your patterns. Are there certain times of day when your mood crashes, certain people who drain you? Certain situations that trigger anxiety or anger? You can't manage what you don't understand. Self-awareness is emotional armor. You start learning to prepare for the moment, not just survive it, and don't underestimate the power of routine. Sometimes we think mood swings are mysterious, when really, they're just symptoms of poor habits. If you're sleep deprived, skipping meals, constantly scrolling, and never giving yourself mental space, of course your mood is all over the place. You weren't made to run non-stop. Your nervous system needs rest, your spirit needs silence, your body needs care. When you neglect those things, your emotions will scream to get your attention. And let's be real, sometimes we use our mood as a weapon. I'm in a bad mood, so just deal with it. That's not strength, that's emotional laziness. The world doesn't owe you comfort because you feel off. And you don't get a pass to treat people poorly just because you're not okay inside. If you want respect, lead yourself first. The hardest person to lead is yourself when you're in a bad mood, but that's when leadership matters most. Now, this doesn't mean you pretend to be fine when you're not. It doesn't mean you fake a smile and bottle things up. No, it means you get honest about what you're feeling and you choose a response that aligns with your values. You don't bury your mood, you manage it. That's how trust is built. That's how peace is protected. That's how character is revealed. I've learned that how I manage my mood often determines the quality of my relationships. It's easy to be kind when I feel good. It's easy to be patient when nothing's bothering me. But the test is when I'm tired, when I'm irritated, when life isn't going my way. That's when the real version of me shows up, and that's when I have to decide, am I going to let this mood control me, or am I going to control how I move through it? I don't want to be a slave to how I feel. I want to be grounded, rooted, steady. I want to be the kind of person people can trust, even when I'm under pressure. I want to carry peace with me, not just wait for peace to find me. And if that's something you want to, then start practicing now. Catch yourself mid-reaction and pause. Ask yourself, is this who I want to be right now? Start small. One breath, one choice, one shift in perspective. That's how emotional control is built, one moment at a time. You're not meant to be ruled by your moods, you're meant to rise above them. Because when you learn to lead yourself emotionally, nothing outside of you can shake what's inside of you. And that's when you become unshakable. Let's talk about something most people avoid until it becomes a problem: money. Not in the get-rich-quick kind of way, not in the flashy, show-off kind of way. I'm talking about something deeper than bank accounts or dollar signs. I'm talking about the relationship you have with your money, how you spend it, how you save it, how you think about it. Because whether we want to admit it or not, money impacts almost every area of our lives, and if you don't learn to discipline your money will end up disciplining you. I know people who work hard, who hustle every single day, who bring in a decent income, but they're always stressed. Always behind, always broke, not because they're not earning, but because they never learned to manage. That's the difference between having money and keeping money. And I say this with love, if you don't tell your money where to go, it will wander off without asking your permission. The truth is, money doesn't fix problems, it amplifies them. If you're reckless with a little, you'll be reckless with a lot. That's why financial peace doesn't come from how much you make, it comes from how you handle what you have. And that starts with intention. Think about it. How many of your financial decisions are actually thought through? I'm not talking about the big ones like buying a car or a house. I'm talking about the daily choices, that swipe at the drive-through, the impulse buys online, the streaming subscriptions you forgot you even signed up for. It's these small decisions, repeated over time, that quietly shape your future, and here's where the discipline part comes in. You've got to have a plan. A real one, not just, I'll try to spend less this month. I'm talking about knowing exactly where every dollar is going. And no, it's not about being restrictive or cheap, it's about being responsible. It's about saying, I value my future more than I value this moment of comfort. That's a hard mindset shift, but it's necessary. You don't need a financial advisor to get started. You just need honesty. Pull out your last bank statement and look it over. Where's your money going? Does it reflect your values? Is it building something or just burning? Because when your spending is disconnected from your goals stay dreams. And dreams without discipline, they die. Now, let's be real, money is emotional, it's not just math. That's why some of us spend when we're sad, or bored, or trying to impress people. We try to buy happiness, security, even identity. But here's the catch, you can't buy peace, you can only build it. And part of building that peace is understanding that every dollar is a seed. What you plant will grow. You can plant debt, or you can plant freedom, you can plant stress, or you can plant stability. But either way, you're planting something. I'm not saying don't enjoy your life, I'm saying enjoy it with wisdom. There's nothing wrong with treating yourself, but if you're constantly rewarding stress with spending, you're building a cycle that leads to burnout and regret. You deserve more than a weekend thrill followed by a month of anxiety. You deserve to look at your finances and feel proud, not panicked. Start with boundaries. Learn to say no to yourself in the moment so you can say yes to bigger things later. That's not deprivation, that's discipline, and discipline always pays you back. Create space between wanting and buying. Create rules for your spending, like waiting 24 hours before big purchases or setting a cap on non-essentials. You'll be surprised how often the impulse fades, and what you're left with is clarity. If you've got debt, don't ignore it. Face it, make a plan, chip away at it, and don't let shame keep you silent. So many people carry quiet financial burdens because they're afraid to admit they messed up. But mistakes aren't the end, they're the beginning of learning. You don't have to stay stuck, you can turn things around. But you've got to start, and on the flip side, save, even a little, even if it's just a few dollars a week. It's not about the amount, it's about the habit. Saving builds confidence. It tells your future self, I've got you. It teaches you that you're not just surviving, you're preparing. One thing I've learned is that money is spiritual. It reveals what you trust, it shows what you worship, and if your money is always going to comfort, comparison, or convenience, maybe it's time to ask yourself what you're really chasing. Because when your money is out of control, chances are something else inside you is too. Financial discipline is really about inner discipline. And this part might sting. Stop trying to impress people who aren't paying your bills. Seriously, the clothes, the car, the tech, the stuff. None of it is worth sacrificing your peace. People's opinions don't pay off debt. They don't build savings. They don't create freedom. You know what does? Quiet, consistent, humble discipline. That's what gets results. So maybe it's time to shift from consumer to steward. From spender to planner, from reacting to leading, because money is a tool, and in the right hands it builds legacy. But in the wrong hands, or careless hands, it creates chains. You don't have to be rich to be wise. You just have to care enough about your life, your future, and your purpose to pay attention to what your money is doing. Because how you handle your money says a lot about how you handle everything else, and if you want to change your life, start by changing how you handle what you already have. Your mind is the control center of your life. Every decision you make, every emotion you feel, every reaction you have, it all starts in your mind. If your thoughts are scattered, your life will be too. If your thinking is foggy, your direction will be unclear. And if your mind is constantly flooded with noise, distractions, fear, or negativity, then peace, progress, and purpose will always feel just out of reach. You can go to the gym every day, eat clean, and hustle hard, but if your mind is undisciplined, you'll keep running in circles. You'll sabotage your own success without even realizing it, because how you think determines how you live, and most people don't lose the battle in their circumstances, they lose it in their thoughts. You ever notice how easy it is for one negative thought to ruin an entire day? Someone says something off, and suddenly you're replaying it over and over in your head. You start writing a story about what they meant, how they see you, what it says about your worth, and none of it might even be true. But because it feels real, it becomes real in your behavior. That's how powerful your mind is. It doesn't need facts, it just needs repetition. And that's why learning to train your mind is so critical. You don't get to choose every thought that pops up, but you do get to decide which ones stay. Not every thought deserves a seat at your table. Not every voice deserves your attention. Just because a thought is loud doesn't mean it's true. Some of the loudest thoughts we have are based in fear, comparison, shame, or insecurity, and if we don't check them, they'll guide us like they're facts. One of the most important habits you can build is learning to observe your thoughts without becoming them. Slow them down. Ask questions. Is this true? Is this helping me? Is this thought aligned with who I'm becoming? That little pause, that moment of reflection, can shift the entire direction of your day. Because you're no longer just reacting, you're leading, and you can't lead your mind well if it's constantly overloaded. We live in a world where the average person consumes more information in a week than people 100 years ago consumed in a lifetime. And we wonder why we're anxious, overwhelmed, or numb. Our minds were not built to process constant notifications, news cycles, comparisons, and distractions. We're overstimulated, but underdeveloped, always scrolling, rarely thinking, always plugged in, rarely present. So you've got to get intentional about creating mental space. Start your day without grabbing your phone. Give your brain a moment of silence before the noise floods in. Read something that feeds your growth, not just your entertainment. Journal your thoughts, not for social media, but for yourself. Put language to what you're feeling so it doesn't fester. That's how you declutter the mind. and don't underestimate the power of stillness. When your mind is racing, you don't need more information, you need more quiet. Silence gives your thoughts room to breathe. It creates space for clarity. That's where insight lies, not in the chaos, but in the calm. Most people are trying to fix external problems without addressing the internal noise. But you can't solve what you can't think clearly about. And here's something I've learned: your mind can't focus if it's constantly switching. Jumping from app to app, task to task, thought to thought. Every time you interrupt your focus, you weaken your ability to stay present. And presence is power. The more you can keep your attention on one thing, whether it's a task, a person, or a moment, the stronger your mind becomes. Focus isn't just about productivity, it's about presence, and presence is where life happens. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. We've all got mental clutter, we've all got unhelpful thought patterns, some of them shaped in childhood, some formed through trauma, some built over time just through repetition. But none of that means you're stuck. Your brain is wired to grow, to change. That's the beauty of it. You're not a prisoner of your thoughts, you're the gatekeeper, and when you take that role seriously, everything starts to shift. Start replacing destructive thoughts with intentional ones. I don't mean fake positivity or cheesy affirmations. I mean speaking truth over yourself with conviction. Remind yourself of what you do control. Speak the kind of thoughts you want to build your life around. I am capable, I am growing, I can handle this, I don't have to respond to every fear. That's not fluff, that's training, and like any training, it takes repetition. You train your body with exercise. You train your discipline with routines, and you train your mind with truth. That's how you renew it little by little, every single day. And when you start thinking clearly, you start choosing wisely, you start speaking more gently, you start reacting less emotionally. That's what clarity does. It simplifies your life. And let's be real, some of us have been living with mental habits that keep us stuck. Overthinking everything, expecting the worst, doubting ourselves before we even try. That's not humility, that's self-sabotage. You weren't created to be your own worst critic. You were built with a mind that can grow, that can reset, that can be renewed. But you've got to stop letting every voice and every fear live rent-free in your head. It's time to take your mind back. Because once your mind is clear, your steps get steady, your purpose gets focused. Your peace becomes unshakable, and that's when you begin to live from the inside out, strong, steady, and fully present. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all. We live in a world that rewards loud opinions, loud responses, loud reactions. Everyone's got something to say, and they want to say it now. There's this constant pressure to clap back, to prove a point, to defend ourselves, to make sure we're heard no matter what. But let me ask you something: has saying more ever really made you feel more at peace? Because what I've found, and maybe you've felt it too, is that silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom, it's strength, it's power under control. You see, not everything needs your reaction, not every comment needs a comeback. Not every confrontation deserves your energy. There's a quiet strength in choosing to hold your peace instead of proving your point. And no, that's not about letting people walk over you. It's about knowing yourself enough to not let someone else dictate how you show up. Most arguments are just ego battles, two people fighting to be right, to be heard, to be seen. But sometimes, the most mature person in the room is the one who doesn't need to win. The one who can pause, the one who can say, you know what, I'm not going to let this pull me out of character. That's not silence rooted in fear, that's silence rooted in confidence. You don't have to respond just because you're uncomfortable. You don't have to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Sometimes silence is the boundary. Sometimes silence is the filter, sometimes silence is the message, and this takes practice, because our instinct is to speak. Especially when we're hurt, when we feel disrespected, when someone crosses a line, we think, if I don't say something, they'll think I'm weak. But silence isn't passive, it's strategic. You're not ignoring the situation, you're choosing not to give it more life than it deserves. You ever been in a conversation that went off the rails because someone, maybe you, maybe them, just couldn't stop talking? The more words, the more tension, the more defense, the more damage, and later you look back and think, that could have been handled so differently if I'd just slowed down. Maybe said less. That's the lesson. I'm not saying don't speak truth. I'm not saying never stand up for yourself. But I am saying not every battle is yours to fight. You've got to be selective with your energy. Your peace is too expensive to spend on petty arguments. Every time you choose silence over impulse, you're protecting that peace. There's this kind of silence that isn't quiet, it's commanding. It says, I know who I am. I don't need to perform for anyone. I don't need to convince anyone. I don't need to prove anything. And when you carry that presence, people feel it. You don't have to raise your voice. Your energy speaks for you. One of the most powerful things I've ever learned is this: silence can be a decision, not avoidance, not retreat. A decision to pause, to reflect, to breathe before reacting. That moment of pause, that's where self-control lives. That's where wisdom shows up. And here's the truth most people miss: silence often makes people show themselves. When you don't react, you allow the other person to reveal who they really are. You get to observe without being pulled into the chaos. You get clarity without the clutter, and you don't lose your footing in the process. There will be times when your silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. When your restraint shows more maturity than any perfect comeback. When your quiet exit carries more weight than 1,000 words. And people will notice even if they don't admit it. You don't owe everyone a response. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. And you don't have to respond to disrespect with disrespect. Sometimes silence is how you say, I'm not available for this version of the conversation. And let me say this: silence also gives you space to process. When you rush to speak, you bypass clarity. You might say something you don't mean, something you can't take back, but when you pause, when you let silence hold the room for a moment, you give yourself the gift of perspective. You give yourself a chance to respond from a place of strength, not reaction. There's a reason stillness is so powerful. It slows the moment down. It reminds you that you are in control, not your emotions, not their words, not the heat of the moment. And look, people might not understand your silence. They might take it the wrong way. That's okay. Let them. You don't owe everyone understanding, especially if they are committed to chaos. Your responsibility is not to fix their perception. It's to protect your own peace and stay aligned with who you want to be. That's what all of this comes down to: alignment, acting in a way that matches the kind of person you're becoming. And sometimes that person is quiet, not because they don't care, not because they're afraid, but because they know that peace is louder than noise. And truth doesn't always need volume, so the next time you feel the urge to speak, just to fill the silence, pause, ask yourself, is this worth my energy, or would my silence speak louder? Because the power isn't always in what you say. Sometimes it's in what you don't say, and that's when you know you're leading yourself well. Everything we've talked about, your mouth, your mood, your money, your mind, all of it works together. And if one area is out of alignment, you feel it everywhere else. You can be wise with your money, but if you can't control your mouth, you'll destroy relationships that money can't repair. You can train your mind, but if your mood leads the way, your thoughts won't translate into action. That's the reality of growth. It's not about mastering one part of your life while ignoring the others. It's about aligning all of them so they're pulling in the same direction. When your mouth, mood, money, and mind are scattered, you're pulled in 4 different directions. Your words go one way, your emotions go another, your spending habits drag you somewhere else, and your thoughts are spinning in circles. That's why you feel exhausted. That's why you feel stuck, because your life doesn't need more effort, it needs alignment. Alignment isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about asking yourself, does the way I speak reflect what I believe? Does the way I spend my time and money reflect what I truly value? Are my thoughts supporting the life I say I want to live? That's where alignment starts, not in performance, but in self-awareness. Think of it like a car. When the wheels are aligned, the drive is smooth, you can go fast, you can go far, and you don't wear yourself out. But when just one wheel is off, even slightly, the whole ride feels off. You have to work harder just to go straight. You burn out faster. The same thing happens in life. Misalignment makes everything harder than it has to be. And most of the time, the misalignment is subtle. It's not always dramatic. It's in the little compromises, when you say things you don't mean just to fit in. When you spend money you don't have to impress people you don't even like. When you stay silent about what matters, but speak loudly about things that don't. These moments might feel small, but over time, they pull you further and further from who you're called to be. So how do you align it all? You slow down, you pay attention, you get brutally honest about what's working and what's not. And then you start making small decisions that support the person you want to become. You start aligning your mouth with maturity, speaking truth, but with grace. You align your mood with purpose, refusing to let temporary feelings create permanent damage. You align your money with values, spending less on impulse, investing more in what lasts. And you align your mind with clarity, feeding it with truth, silence, and stillness instead of noise and distraction. It's not about big overnight changes, it's about consistency, quiet, steady, humble discipline, the kind that doesn't get applause but builds a life of peace. The kind that most people won't see, but you'll feel. Every time you choose a response over a reaction, you're aligning. Every time you walk away from a pointless argument, you're aligning. Every time you track your spending, speak with restraint, or sit in silence instead of spiraling, you're aligning. You want to know who you really are. Don't just look at what you say, look at what you repeat. Look at what you allow, look at how you spend your unguarded moments. That's who you are becoming. And when those moments are in harmony, when your words match your beliefs, when your habits reflect your goals, when your mood doesn't derail your values, that's when you're living aligned. That's when you feel whole. There's nothing more powerful than a person who's not divided within themselves, someone whose actions, words, emotions, and thoughts are all flowing in the same direction. That's not just personal power, that's personal peace, and people feel it, they trust it, because alignment creates integrity. Integrity creates consistency, and consistency builds trust. Let me tell you something real, people aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to authenticity, to peace, to presence, and when you're aligned, you carry that kind of presence. You walk into rooms without needing attention, you speak without needing validation, you lead without needing control. Why? Because you're not performing, you're living from a place of inner order, and when things fall out of place, because they will, you don't spiral. You recalibrate, you pause, you check in, you ask, where did I drift? What needs to shift? That's the beauty of alignment. It's not rigid, it's responsive, it grows with you, it's less about rules and more about rhythm. The rhythm of checking in, realigning, coming back to center again and again, and don't let the world rush you. This isn't about pace, it's about direction. You don't have to move fast if you're moving with focus. You don't have to shout if you're rooted in strength. You don't have to prove anything when your life already reflects what you believe. That's alignment, that's the goal. So when you feel pulled in too many directions, when your words don't match your actions, when your habits feel out of sync with your heart, don't shame yourself, just come back, one adjustment at a time. Because every small realignment brings you closer to a life that actually feels like yours, and that kind of life, that's worth protecting. If this message hit home for you, don't just watch and scroll, pause, reflect. And take one small step today to align your mouth, mood, money, and mind. Drop a comment below with the one area you're working on, and let's grow together. Subscribe for more content that sharpens you, not just motivates you. Your future is built by what you do next. Start now.